Hi, my name is Adam Tahoon. I'm on the WAT 2.0 team. My product owner is Dr. Mark Finlayson. My mentor is Dr. Masood Sujadi, and this video is going to be the introduction to our application, which is called WAT, which stands for Web Archive Tool. So here I have opened up the home page or the launch page of the desktop application. Very briefly, I'll just talk about how we built it. It's built with a framework called Electron, which is it's built on top of Chromium, and it's a way to build desktop applications for multiple operating systems. And it runs with you build it with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, the way you would build web applications. So when you're designing it, you're really designing it the way you would design a web app. So very briefly, I can go over what all the options we have here. So one thing I'd like to point out is up top here we have the ability to have tabbing. So with tabbing, you can make as many tabs as you want, and what it'll do, it'll direct you straight to the home page. And this is good as we go down the line on what we could do. So in the case we want to download a set of pages or we want to open a WAV file, we can open multiple tabs to do that in one application. So right here we have two options. Option one is downloading a set of pages, and then option two is choosing a WAV file to open. So those two things are the primary use case for this application. This application is a toolkit for NLP researchers or anyone who is interested in archiving web pages. And what it really is that you would give it a URL link, and then you can download all the information from the web page and package it up into a .wav file nice and clean, as well as some other different metadata extraction features that we have. So down here we also have the option to open WAT files with the WAT Viewer app or with a default browser. Default browser would be Chrome or whatever you have your default browser set to. And then here we have the ability to choose how we want to translate .watt files. So this is actually a new feature that we built out in the second iteration. So for some people, they would like to have the ability to translate their web pages, and we'll go brief into a demo of how that works. So what that means is, let's say you get a news article in Spanish, and you want to have the ability to translate it to English and extract the main content out of it, which is another feature that we have. We allow what WAT file does is it'll, given an HTML page, it will be able to extract the main content out of it, and that's actually the primary use for this is for clean data for NLP researchers to use. So when you're doing that, you want to have the ability to translate WAT files. So let's say if it comes in Spanish, you want to have the main content in English extracted. So we provide different translate option tools. So one thing that we have is Google Translate implemented. So if you provide a token API, you'll be able to use Google Translate, which is probably the best translation API. And then also we have Yandex API, which is a Russian organization, and they have really good Russian to English translations. So we have that option provided too. So one thing we'll do is just keep with the WAT Translate, because the other two you need to provide a key, and in some cases they cost money. So really quickly here we'll go into the download option. So very briefly I'll go over what all these options mean. So the first thing we want to do is probably choose input URLs that we want to use. So I have one here. So this is a very basic TXT file. It just has a link to a URL, and let me show you what I mean by that. So let's say what we can do is we can go to, here's a website I know works, and by works I mean they won't block your IP or anything like that. So let's see, here we have an article, and maybe let's do this one first. So briefly what you can do is you grab this link, and we're going to make a text file real quick. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to want to echo this link into URL example.txt. And if we go now into our documents, so here we go, we have that. So that's the basic way you want to input text. We do sanitize it and make sure that it's a proper URL. But the main way people are getting these TXT files is web scraping and then just appending it to a TXT file. So what we can do is go back with the example we just got now. You're going to want to select an output. So we can put it in here, Electron projects. So here you can do a rate limit on kilobytes per second. And that's because some websites will have certain rate limits on how much content you extract, and that's just a parameter that you pass to wget. We also have the option of choosing how many threads you want to use spawn in your downloading process, and what that does is tells our Python process that we spin up how many URLs do you want to download simultaneously, asynchronously. So one would just mean we download one at a time. Two would be we download two at a time, and so on. And then here is a JSON file that you can write to. This is an optional parameter. So basically what you'd want to do is provide an Excel file that what it'll do is as URLs download, it'll write the metadata to it, and we'll briefly go over what the metadata is after we download. So here I'm going to start the download process, and we kind of totally rebuilt the user interface for this. So very briefly, we have like a progress bar, and let me just quickly make sure, since this is running locally, that our WAT server is spin up. Heroku. Oh yeah, so there you go. It worked. So as you see, we now have the progress bar goes to 100, and that as more URLs start to download, so it'll let you know the progress. Up here we have a stop button, so what that will do, it'll stop the downloading process, and we'll go into that a little bit more detail, but what it does is it creates kind of a session and saves what the state of your download process is. So here we have the status. So this was downloaded successfully. We had the title. We have the author. So I guess maybe there isn't really a good author for this. We have the publish date. Then we have a couple options. So option one would be to open the WAT file. So we can click that. So now here we have the WAT file. We have here the same WAT file opened. I mean the URL that we found, and this is the content is all here. You see all the articles, the comments. Going back here, we have another option, which is to view the main content. So what we consider main content of a web page is exactly what the whole article is about. So in this thing, the article is about Tesla's giant virtual power plant expands to 1,000 homes. So that's the main text of the page. And going back here, we can kind of maybe briefly show. So let's say when you download a URL, you'll have this, electric text. You'll have this menu bar. You'll have all these little widgets that you can click to. You'll have about the author. You'll have these guides. You have all these comments. So we're not interested in that. We're just interested in the main content of the page. So if we click here, we can see the main content of the page, and that's all we want. So this is kind of what our researchers are looking for, is this. And we developed a whole new algorithm for this in this iteration of the project using a machine learning approach that actually did really well and is a new, I guess, open source high. So you can read about that in our final docs as well. So going back into here, we will briefly go, let's see, what else can we do? Oh, one more thing we can show in these view options is that we can delete the WAT file. So this will delete the WAT file. So if we go here, We can go into the folder that it creates, and there's no WAF file. So yeah, I have a lot of different options here. Let me just throw that away. So then, yeah, let's maybe go into the idea of creating a session, and then maybe we'll open up some more WAF files. So if I click here, I'll have these options to continue a session. Right now I had no session stop. So what we can do is we'll go here. I have a good example for this. It's called many URLs. We'll open that, select the directory output. It'll be that one. We'll say, now we don't need any translate. We'll do, let's say, do 2 numbers of threads. So we start this download process. Let's wait for a couple to finish. And we'll click the stop button. And let's see how it handles itself. Okay, cool. So we stopped the download process. Some of these finished because at the point we click stop, the threads were still running. So it waits for all threads to come back, and it shows here that these were stopped. And then very briefly, we can maybe show this button. This is very simple. All it is, click a WAF file to open. Perfect. So we're going to exit out of here. We're going to go back here. And now let's just continue the session. And let's briefly show in my directory. So this is the session that was created. So it has the 5 WAF files that were downloaded, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it has a TXT file that's stored. And these are the remaining URLs that haven't been downloaded. So when we go here, we'll say download a set of pages. We'll do session options. We'll open this one right here. We'll go here. And let's say, yeah, I don't want the right to JSON. And we'll continue the session. So now, as you can see, we have now the remaining 5 URLs that we want to download. So those will go ahead and start downloading, and we'll save them to the folder itself. So those are the ideas of continuing a session. Let's see what else we can show as this starts downloading. And very briefly in here, one of these examples I have is a URL that's failed. It's just a link that doesn't work, and we can show that the status should just have an exclamation point. So as you see right here, the status is an exclamation point, and we can also sort these. All these options can be sorted. So this one wasn't able to download. We can delete the WAF files again. And yeah, that's about it for this session. And then let's briefly show the translate. I'm going to use WAT translate because it's free. And I'm going to go, I have something right here. Yeah, this is a Spanish article. We're going to put it in here. We want to say we want to translate. So we have this option to do auto detection, but that's only available for the Google API, so it'll give you a warning if you haven't selected the Google API. So we're going to say we want to go from Spanish to English, and we'll start downloading. So this might take a little bit of time just because our own in-house server takes a little bit of time, and that is just because it's running on a CPU, and translation is pretty it's pretty time-consuming on a CPU. If we had a server with a GPU, it would be pretty fast. It was actually what we originally did is use OpenNMT, which is open source library for neural machine translation, and it was very slow out of the box. So we actually were able to improve we downloaded the source code and improved on it and got about an accuracy, a performance improvement of 30%. So it is much faster than it was originally, but there are definitely ways to improve it. So this is going to go ahead and download, and it's going to download the article in Spanish. It is going to translate it into English, and then it is going to extract the main content in English. So that's very important because for our purposes' sake, we want the main content in English because for the researchers' goals is they want to run their NLP algorithms, and those algorithms are specifically for the English language. So while this downloads, let's see, make sure I have the Python. Oh, perfect. Oh, it finished. So yeah, as you can see, we hit that post request, translate content from English to from Spanish to English, and we'll go over all the code very briefly. So I'm going to open this WAT file. So this is a WAT file in Spanish. As you can see, this is Spanish. So if we want to view the translated version, we can just go to our menu bar, click Translate HTML, and this is a whole feature we built out as well in this iteration. So now we see that we have the article in English. And then another cool thing that we can show is we want to go to View Options. We can view the main content, and the main content is in English. You know, there are some words that are still in Spanish, and that is just because, you know, our translation isn't the best. It's not, you know, at the likes of Google, but it is free, and it does get the a lot of the idea correctly, and a lot of the sentence grammatically correct, and very good translation. So that's pretty much the main use of our app, or a very nice brief intro to how to use it. I like to also point out that I'm using Mac OS as my environment. We do have it cross-platform, so it works on both Linux and Windows. Some UI features might be different. That's just because it's different operating systems, but for the most part, they are very similar. So briefly, I'll go over now a little bit of the architecture and how this works. I'm actually going to use my senior project poster. And then I'm going to go briefly over Electron Architecture, because that might be important to know. So the Web Archive tool application kind of exists with a main IPC process, and then it has renderer processes. And maybe let's go into Electron very quickly. So we have something called the main process, and that is what can be displayed on the GUI. And then there's something called the renderer process. And these are processes that are spawned by Electron itself to do other things. So this is really important, because what we can do is, as an application, we have this main process, and it's showing different windows, and it's displaying different things. And then with the renderer processes, these are spawn processes that communicate through messaging. So it gives you a lot of really good functionality right out of the box. So yeah, so we have a viewer, we have a downloader, and the downloader and main communicate through just message parsing. So when we have a point of downloading a URL, we are going to spawn the WAT command line interface, which is the early stages of this project. This application was just a command line interface, and you'd give it some command line arguments, and it would download them just through the command line. So what we built is a GUI around it, and it spawns that process. It does the translation, it does the metadata extraction, it does the content extraction, and the spawn process and the main IPC process, they communicate through messages, and then from there we communicate to the downloader and viewer through messaging as well. So everything is done through messaging. So this whole area is Electron main process, Electron renderer processes, and this is all Python. And that's just the main architecture of the page, of the application. Nothing more to it. Our content extraction actually is one thing that we do. We do have it as an API spin up, and that is just because of space purposes, because it is a machine learning. It's a, what's the good word for this? We have like our content extraction is just an object of weights, and for machine learning purposes, what you do is you have an object of weights after you train it, and those are usually really big, and it doesn't fit into the bundling of the Electron application. So we're using a Heroku server on how to, and that'll kind of go over in the maintaining code video. But yeah, that's just the main flow of this application. The stack is very simple. It's just Electron and Python. You can learn a lot about Electron on their website, and for Python, it's Python 2.7. So yeah, that's about it for this. It's about 20 minutes long, so I'll cut it now. Once again, my name is Adam Tahoon. My product owner is Dr. Mark Finlayson, and my mentor is Dr. Masood Sajadi. And this is the introduction video for WAT 2.0. Thank you.